All right.
Congressman Mast, thank you so much for joining us today and taking some time out of your busy schedule. I know that Aadhya Shah is here as well, and she was one of the students who had a chance to work with us on some legislative issues, rather, in relation to Cube satellites when we first kind of got started. So essentially, I thought we would start off by talking about what you thought. I think you were still in your first term when we kind of reached out to you and said, hey, I've got some debate kids who are interested in finding out how the legislative process works, and what you thought about kids doing that kind of thing.
Well, number one, when debate kids reach out to you about the legislative process, that makes perfect sense, right? Now, I've been away from debate for a few years, but when I was doing it back in high school, and I think back on it now about the way debate went for us, you were speaking as quickly as possible, trying to throw out there as many possible points as you could that would hopefully not be refuted by the other side, and that's how it was scored. And as much as that was a part of the process at that time, and I don't know how much it's like that today, it's a lot like that today.
Yes, unfortunately, in certain ones like Public Forum and Lincoln Douglas, but yes.
I give it as a critique for debate that it has to, and for the legislative process. So often in the legislative process, you just throw out there so much talk about whatever it is, and you never truly give the chance another side to give an honest retort or have a real argument about what that real meat and potatoes portion of it is. You don't necessarily in life win the real argument because you made so many points. Some of them are almost non-consequential. They're little detours off to the side of it. And, so in that, I'm glad that they're participating in it. And I think it's an important piece of it. But that's, one of the changes that I'd like to see is if you're serious about thinking about the legislative process, one of the things I do quite often is I'll ask questions and then I'll just ask one question and wait for an answer and sit in total silence and wait for an answer. Because I think you can get to the point that you realize you've made a more powerful statement by the fact that people can't answer, can't retort, sit there silently, realize how uncomfortable it is, and there's some strength in that as well. So that's my point.
Well, I know that we were surprised because when we first came up with the idea of actually working with a real legislator, taking it beyond the classroom, we had no idea what that entailed. And Aadhya, I'll ask you as a student who worked on that process, what was most, I guess, rewarding for you about being part of, or maybe even most frustrating with trying to figure out how the whole process worked?
Definitely the most rewarding part of it would definitely be just like seeing how everything unfolded, like just being like in seventh, I think I was in 8th grade at the time, being a little 8th grade student, like getting the opportunity to travel up to DC, working with the staffers and working on creating this piece of legislation, and that we got to sit in the House floor while it was being introduced. I mean, it was just like a surreal experience, a surreal moment, but it was also definitely frustrating, like trying to figure out the little logistics, trying to figure out the wording, like how we should approach it, how to do it, because it's definitely very different than just like regular debate legislation. Like actual Congress legislation is definitely really different. So I guess figuring out how that works was definitely challenging. But again, like with the staffers, like a lot of support we had, it was definitely just an overall very rewarding process for sure.
Congressman Mast, I've advocated with students for about 15 years on the Hill, and it's been very uniform over the years that Florida as a state, regardless of your party, is very pro-space. A lot of the issues related to our space program. Do you find that when you're doing committee work, that if there are any Florida representatives on your committees, that you have a unique sort of bond with them, or you have a different level of communication, and with anybody that may be related to space issues? Do you find that that's true in your committee work, if you will?
Yeah, so the committee work matters 100%, and that should be one of the big takeaways really for the students about who it is that they're working with. Now, I represent the Weiss School, so it makes perfect sense that we have these conversations. But to be perfectly clear about how you could be most tactical in working, with the House, it would be best to work with a representative that's on the Committee of Science, Space, and Technology. and that's on the subcommittee of aeronautics that's working specifically with a program in their day-to-day legislative committee work on a program like the CubeSat program, if that's what it is that they want to work on. And so there's lessons in both parts in, you know, working with where it is that you're connected locally. Obviously, that's a lot easier. It's a lot easier for me to get by the school than say, you know, Michael Waltz from the Jacksonville area to come down and come to the school. But if you really want to get something through, it makes a lot more sense to get them on that committee and those specific subcommittees that really matter to the issue. Beyond that, I would say, yeah, you look at what's going on in the state of Florida and how important space really is to us. You know, you look at Texas and you look at Florida, you look at where, you know, where vehicles entering space are being launched from, and vehicles returning from space are landing. And those become really the two most important places. We see, you know, a push for the headquarters of the Space Force to be in Florida, and, you know, a host of other issues related to that. And I think you really see important, or rather how big it is to our economy, not just in terms of NASA, but in terms of those private entities that are being, you know, fully supported, whether it's by, you know, in Elon Musk or, you know, some other private company or some other billionaire that wants to invest in that. You just travel through Cape Canaveral area and you'll see all the companies up there.
So to kind of piggyback off of that, the idea that we do have an industry here, obviously we create these little future engineers who are interested in kind of staying here in Florida. Is that something that you think that maybe we need to change as far as an educational approach in Florida, the idea of retaining the future workforce that might be able to feed into that pipeline?
Well, being a competitive person, I want our city, you know, our cities to be the best, number one. I want our state to be the best. I want our country to be the best. That's just the nature. So we do want to retain that knowledge, that academic work that's been done throughout all of these years to get to, you know, such a high level of understanding on whatever their level of engineering might be, or anything else that somebody wants to study. Yeah, we want to keep that here, but we really do have tremendous opportunity right now with what's going on. I'll use again the Cape as a specific example of where there's so much opportunity. If you would have gone by the Cape, let's say back in 2014, 2015, you know, even before that, when the shuttle program had been, you know, wound down at that point, it was like a ghost town. And it was a place that people were scared. They were losing their jobs. Engineers didn't know where they were going to find their work because everything there was closing down. And that is not the world there today. It's an exciting place where people are finding so much work, both within a public sector and a private sector, having tremendous opportunity, really, you know, being in demand on both sides. So
when we come up to see you, it was when Aadhya came, I think it was my second time that I had gone to DC. So I have not nearly the experience that Kevin had. So I know for me as a teacher, it was kind of amazing and eye-opening to see the inner workings. And I was shocked at how long it took to actually get something from the beginning and then it still is never ending. How frustrating is that for you at times to deal with a process where you can't get, I mean, it's frustrating for me. I can only imagine when you're talking about Lake Okeechobee or, you know, all these other issues that you deal with. So how do you manage to do that and still feel like you're making, you know, progress?
Low expectations. That's how you manage it. Low expectations. No, listen, we're made to be a slow and deliberate process, and you know, it seems that those moments that really deserve the most deliberateness in the process seldom get it, and those things that seem so common sense that you would think everybody could just get behind immediately are purposefully made painfully slow. And truthfully, I really find that to be the case. It's one of the biggest frustrations. But I'll say that with this caveat. There's still no government, no capital, no system anywhere else that I'd rather be a part of.
I think we agree with you that no matter how broken we are, it's still the best of all solutions. And that's both humbling, I guess, and ironic. I think it's very cool that, you know, Republicans sometimes don't get a lot of high marks for environmental issues, and yet almost everything I see, you know, is you trying to be a great steward with the water, right? And how much do you find that you get maybe some support from across the aisle with your environmental issues sometimes, or do you feel like you're the lone warrior for the 18th district on that issue?
You know, I think I can, maybe sometimes it might appear as a lone warrior because I get a lot of marks for that. It's by far the biggest focus of my work locally, you know, doing things for what affects the immediate community that I represent. So yeah, that gets the attention. That doesn't mean there aren't a lot of others that do this work on it. And I think it's an example to go back to one of these places where the ramifications of what's done deserve the highest level of deliberateness. And it's one of those places where quite often, you know, I see very real problems out there in the world as it relates to our environment. And I like to think that the one thing government should be relied upon to provide beyond opportunity is that when you walk out your door, there is clean air, clean water, clean ground surrounding you. I like to think that's one of the most important public goods that government is responsible for providing. But when I look at that, you find a system where there is some major jump to conclusions, not have to prove the points, and you know, let's give an example of energy usage, right? Let's talk about something easy. Okay, you see the push to change CAFE standards on automobiles, move all automobiles to electric by whatever year, without taking the time to even ask the question of, can the electric grid support the usage of charging 35 million more vehicles at these you know, peak or non-peak hours or things like that? These are questions that deserve answering before you let the policy get ahead of those ideas. And because of the saber rattling and the alarm ringing, it's not as deliberate as it needs to be on that front, and that's one of the frustrations.
What has been the biggest surprise? Because now you finished your first term, and now that you've been reelected, what is different now, not being a rookie versus, you know, when it was all brand new to you? Now that you've got maybe a few scars, maybe been dinged around a little, what's different this go around versus your first go around?
The expectation, but not the fight. So I could probably say, let's say month one or year one or something like that. You go in there with these things that you say they're so common sense. Maybe it doesn't even cost the government a dime to do it, where they're trying to do it in other ways that might cost them, you know, years of appropriations and other things. And you say, we could do this for much less. Why not do that? You'd expect everybody to get around it. I know now that everybody's not just going to cheer and say, yeah, let's do it the smart way. But the fight to get things done in that way hasn't changed at all. Well, I realize in advance that some of the fights, how they're going to turn out before they turn out, it's not going to stop me from trying to fight with logic and common sense.
You know, and you mentioned the fight. Sometimes it's just a matter of getting people to understand. So to bring this back kind of to where we were working with the students, if there were some students or even teachers who are listening who are wondering, wow, like how did they actually get to work with a congressperson, or what advice would you have them about understanding the process if they want to, and when they should actually come and speak with a legislator?
Yeah, the answer is always. I always tell people this. They're like, oh, you know, what if somebody runs against you, blah, 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 that kind of thing. It's not my seat. It's not mine. It's the people of the 18th congressional district. I get to sit in it for a period of time, but it's not mine. So if you want to be of the people, by the people, for the people, or you want your government to be of, by, and for the people, then demand that it's of, by, and for the people. Demand that they listen to you, whether you're an educator or a student, whether you're 8 or 18 or 38. Demand that they listen to you. And you know, that doesn't mean demand that they agree with you, but demand that they hear you out. That's why we have representative democratic republic government. You know, that is meant to represent a people, and hopefully go out there and not do just what the most people ask you to do, but rather go out there and explain to everybody that's interested in the issue why it is that this is the best course of action, because you've had the opportunity to research everybody that's done this, speak to people that are in other countries that have tried this, or other businesses or agencies or departments that have tried this, where it went right, where it went wrong. And the fact that you have a staff of 15, 20 people that are out there helping you to research every single bit of that. And this is why it's the right decision and what they may have missed. You know, don't just feel that you have to do what the most people ask you to do. You know, the job is to go out there and do what is most researched and correct, and then explain to as many people as possible why that was the choice, the path that you chose.
So Aadhya, I'm going to follow up with you on this afterwards, but so when students or teachers come to speak with a legislator, what are some pieces of advice that you would, as far as the presentation, when they come to speak, what should they know? Anything like as far as talking points or?
Yeah, look, I'll give this one. This is not a point of frustration by any means. Everybody likes to, you know, it's like the old Cheers song, right? You know, sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name, right? You want people to know that you have a background that lends itself to being able to speak in an educated way, that your opinion should be taken in value. But the critique that I would tell you is quite often people want to come in and speak, and they'll spend 20 of their 30 minutes on the sale of their background and why you should listen to them, instead of what they're trying to sell you on. And that's the point. In that, treat it a little bit more like the debate team. Try to get as many points at that point in as possible that you can get your points in. You don't spend your time on the debate team telling everybody who you are and necessarily why they should listen to you. You're bringing up the points and asking for a refute on them or a comment on them. That's the time to bring those up. When you're speaking to the principal, to the legislator, to the whoever, spend more time on that piece of it.
Got it. And so that's kind of why we're having this now. Aadhya can remember, and she's going to answer a question here in a second as well. But during January and February, that's our legislative blitz time, right? So that's when we would end up coming up to see you in February. We start off with Tallahassee, which is what we're doing now. But Aadhya, from what you just heard him say, and you remember kind of helping to get the kids ready, to, and you were a kid yourself. What do you think was the most important lesson overall from being able to go and speak with, of course they're human, but like we see them in such higher levels of society, right, as a legislator. So what do you think is your biggest, I guess, takeaway that you learned from the process?
Definitely the
I'll
biggest
pause,
thing.
Aadhya, for one quick second here, and just to comment on that and say, there's probably a lot of people in the political world that have told this joke, but I heard it from Marco Rubio. He said he spent the first 6 months wondering how in the world he got there to the Senate. And he spent the next however many years wondering how in the world everybody else got there. And that's something you should take as true.
No, right? As we all go in, everybody's a little bit wondering, how did this guy get here? How did this girl get here? So
yeah.
All right,
Exactly.
Aadhya, what have you learned the most from that process? Has it benefited you at all in high school, or as you're looking now, gosh, you're in what, 10th grade?
11th grade.
Oh, no, stop. I forget even how old my own son is here. Okay, so I apologize. You're about to be graduating from high school soon. How did that opportunity help you?
I mean, yeah, the biggest takeaway from like the legislative blitzes, all of that, is that just to be calm and just to like not really be nervous. I know like that's normal, but like it's a conversation. Like they're eager to listen to what you have to say. They're excited that, like at that time I was a 7th grader and 8th grader, like the legislators, they're just excited that someone like me is talking to them, and they're eager to listen to what you have to say. Like obviously you should know like your facts and you should know what you're talking about. But again, it's just like about having fun and having a conversation, sticking to your points, but just like it's all about having a conversation. And it's also like it's helped me now with whenever I talk to someone, I talk to my teachers, I try to talk to someone in another class, or I write something. It's all just about stating what you have to say in a clear and concise manner while also just having a conversation and not making it like too scripted.
I've always found students at the Weiss School to do that.
Well, one of the things that we really believe strongly in, as you know, is the idea of taking, just because they can build cube satellites, if they can't really share what that is, then it's not really that knowledgeable. You've got to be able to share what you know, articulately. Right. So that's one of the things we try to do. Do you want to?
And I just want to add that the kids may seem really cool and collected sometimes with you, Congressman, but it's just like the Army. Repetition and practice takes away a lot of the anxiety, I think. So we rehearse, we practice, and we want them to be comfortable. Just because this guy's on the evening news doesn't mean you can't go in there and execute as you practiced. So,
But to that point, they should know, what am I doing before I end up on the evening news or whatever it might be. I'm going over in my mind, what is it that they want to ask me? What is my opinion on that question? What about this issue? What about that issue? What about things that I haven't thought? And it's going over all of those potentials that gives you the confidence. If same way for me, if I didn't do any of that before I went into one of those, my confidence level would be here instead of here.
Right. Do you anticipate that as we get a little bit closer to normal society, that maybe there'll be opportunities for students to be interns in offices, either locally or I know at one time there were interns in DC. Do you see that program continuing to exist, maybe modified, or for instance, do you have folks in your local offices that might be in high schools just volunteering?
We've had them, and hopefully we get back to the point of that. It's an important work both for them to be a part of that legislative process and learn about it and participate in it. And there's work that we need to help getting done as well. The old saying, many hands make light work. So
Aadhya,
can I ask a question?
Yes,
Aadhya, so are you going to become seeing us to apply to hopefully West Point #1, then maybe like Naval Academy, Air Force Academy, Coast Guard Academy, Merchant Marine Academy, something like that? You're going to come see us for that?
I have no clue as of now.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, don't forget to think about that.
I will keep all my options open.
I can tell you that one of the first satellite builder students at the school is and has applied to West Point. Well, maybe not West Point, but the Air Force Academy, I'm certain of. So I do know that the kids are trying to take what they began in middle school to the next level. And the first group of satellite kids are seniors this year, just to give you a heads up.
It won't be long. There'll be another academy for the Space Force. That's the truth.
well, that's what we're trying to.
That should be in Florida, by the way.
We want it to be Sprotzy, right?
Totally
I
agree.
put it out there, but I want it to be Sprotzy.
Yeah, actually, Space ROTC seems like a wonderful way to get kids in the pipeline early.
We can work on that to get the first Space Force ROTC over there at the. That's worth working on right there.
I would definitely be reaching out to you for that. Then that's great.
That's great.
No, it's not. We haven't thought about a school, but that's not an idea that this is the first time we thought about it.
So one thing is I had spoken to some folks up at KSC one time about why is there not a governor's school at Kennedy Space Center where the brightest kids in the state go, like the governor's schools and some other states where, why not? That's something very unique and distinctive for our state. I could imagine if I were a young person, that would be a great place to spend your high school time. So whatever we could do to help you advance that, we can call it the Mast Aerospace Academy if you want. That's fine with me.
I don't think it's in any danger of being named that, but I'm happy to work on it.
Yeah. Well, I know you have many other things to do with your day today, so we'll be closing this out soon. But Aadhya, I know that you will be reaching out and working. Now you're leading your own team. There are no adults involved for you. You'll be setting up some for the DC team. So I don't know if Congressman Mast is assigned to your group or not, but how do you intend to take some of the lessons that you learned as a student and now teach those who are under you?
Again, I just intend on enforcing the idea that this is all just a conversation and you're there to have fun. Obviously, it's like really important work and what we're doing, but again, we're kids and we just intend to have like a conversation while saying what we need to say and just learning more about the entire legislative process, what goes in, like how the staffers play a role, like what the congressman does. Like we just intend on learning about that and having a conversation with whoever it may be that we were talking to, while also, again, talking about what we need to in a clear, concise way.
Well, and you learn a lot about the committees too, right? So one of the things is you teach them how to research what committee someone is on, maybe their background, so that they can kind of make a little bit of that small talk to make that conversation happen. a little bit easier. So just to kind of, as we wrap up, any final words? I guess I'll start with Aadhya and then we'll finish with the Congressman here. Any words of advice for any kids who might be nervous, thinking that, you know, they should either maybe get involved with something that either details debate or even CubeSats, or even for some teachers about who might be a little bit, you know, trepidatious about getting involved in the legislative process?
For me, see, I'm not like a big sciencey person. That's not my background. I got into this from the debate and like the policy and the legislative side of it. That's where my area is really. So I do suggest like to everybody to have some sort of experience in public speaking debate. Like it helps in everything. Like it helps in my classes when I have to give a presentation for projects. It helps when I'm trying to present for something else that's not school related, like something like this. And it's just, even if you're not so focused heavy on like the technical side of stuff, I do think it's important to be able to say whatever you have to say in a proper manner. And that's where public speaking and debate comes into play.
And one of the things I learned from this, because I was never a sciencey or math person, as you know, as well, right? So that's just the talkie side of the talkies and the techies. But essentially what I learned from this experience is that you can have a passion in one thing that you think is not STEM at all. And it turns out with regards to space, there's a place for all of us, whether it's the policy side, you know, space ethics, the idea of space law eventually, and passing bills that look at that, but also, you know, even our kids who do the art and the patches and the music, you know, there's a way to blend all of that into that career. So any final words from you, Congressman, as to, you know, what we can do to inspire this generation of kids to either, you know, get involved in the legislative process or even just to get involved in our STEM programs here in this state?
One, just to say, please get involved. It matters. And you might find a love that you pay attention to for your whole life, regardless of whether you're, an engineer or an engineer astronaut or anything else. You'll find a passion of something that absolutely affects you, no matter where you are. And the other thing that I would say is, confidence, I would look at just like any other muscle in your body. You got to work it to make it stronger. And something that you have to sit there and ask yourself, dare I do this? Am I going to be nervous about doing this? I think if you don't take the chance to go out there and do it, that's probably one of the few times that you'll be left with a regret in your life. You got to take those moments of nervousness and use them as a chance to build confidence.
Well, we really appreciate you. It looks like you pulled over at a rest stop or something on the interstate.
A park. I have my two boys with me, so I just found a park down the road, let my boys out to go play in the park where they wouldn't be too loud,
Right.
and it wouldn't look like I was doing a Zoom call and driving at the same time.
That's not good for a legislator.
Address the safety issues of that.
We just really appreciate you taking the time, and always we not only are you great to work with, but your staff is first class. So we thank you for having such a professional staff that works with our students. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, and for putting up with us. I mean, I know I say that, but I mean it. I know I'm sending emails constantly. They always answer me back. Like, seriously, it's been such a great experience for me and all. And I really, we can't thank you enough. But I am going to reach out to you about Spratzy because I'm very big on this idea. So I'll touch base soon. Thank you again so much.
I think it's a great idea too.
All right.
See you later.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. Bye, Aadhya. Thanks so much.
Bye.
It's 2021 now. When we first started working with Congressman Mast, it was 2018.
2017.
And was it really? Yeah, I guess we started writing it in 2017. And to be able to sit, I know Aadhya mentioned it, but to be able to be sitting in the gallery when he announced the legislation was perhaps one of the most exciting points in my career. And I never thought that a teacher could just go and talk to their Congress people. So thank you for including me in on that process. I guess when I think about where we're at, and it's not, we've had 2 iterations of a piece of legislation that we've had a chance to work on. And we realize that there's this long process. If something doesn't get put through in a particular legislative session, they have to reintroduce it. And it just seems like we could maybe change the way we get some of our laws pushed through, because it just seems to take forever. And just the bureaucracy behind it was what was shocking to me. But I think my takeaway on hearing both Aadhya and the Congressman today is the idea that we as citizens, it is our right and our job really to be able to talk to the people who make the laws for us. And so it doesn't matter if you're interested in creating a skate park or creating a CubeSat program that influences education, finding what your community needs and then getting behind it and maybe advocating for it is is incredibly important. And I also want to say before you do that, just the experience of, as Aadhya continued to say, the idea of a conversation, learning how to be able to speak with someone that's not in a formalized way, but just to kind of piggyback off of what they're saying is a huge skill that I think even adults should be able to learn at some point. So go ahead.
Absolutely. I also want to, recall that I think one of our talking points for today was that there is a real intrinsic value in grassroots advocacy and understanding how the process of government works. And whereas we might see folks on the evening news or on C-SPAN or on the internet, they are humans that, as the congressman said, they are there to represent their district. And it's important that if there's an issue that is important to our students that might be listening or our educators, there is a good process. There's a way in which you can go out and reach out to those staffers and our representatives and try to make the change and be the change that you want to see.
Well, excellent. So I know that we're going to have a few more episodes where we're going to be talking about some of that advocacy. We had one recently with Dale Ketchum, of course, for Space Florida, as we're about to embark on Space Day this year. So we'll be talking with some students as well this week.
I'd like to also throw out the little teaser to remember that there's going to be a contest coming up soon. We're going to be announcing a team competition that we're doing in collaboration with Explore Mars. So stand by for that on a future podcast as well.
Yeah, so much going on as we start this academy and as we continually pose the question of how do we go about including others in this idea.
Absolutely.
Right? So stay tuned with us. Thanks for subscribing. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so that you don't miss any episodes of Let's Go to Space, and also so you can be kept apprised. So join us as we say, let's go to space.